afternoon. This is the regular City Council meeting for April 29th, 2025. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Santa Maria. Councilmember Sneddon.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman is not here. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
Here. And we have a ceremonial item to read.
Yes, item 1, Fair Housing Month.
So, Fair Housing Month, April 2025. Whereas April is National Fair Housing Month, celebrating the passage of the Federal Fair Housing Act in April of 1968, which prohibits discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, or familial status. And whereas the 2025 theme for the National Fair Housing Month is, quote-unquote, fair housing, together we can, unquote. And whereas, according to the 2025 Fair Housing Trends Report, despite local, state, and federal laws prohibiting discrimination, 34,150 fair housing complaints were filed, the most ever filed in a single year for the third year in a row, alleging discrimination based on one or more of the Fair Housing Act's 7 protected classes. And whereas in 2023, the most recent nationwide data on record, California had the highest number of fair housing complaints, nearly doubling the number of complaints lodged in the second highest state, and 1/5 of all complaints lodged in the United States that year. And whereas the City of Santa Barbara is committing to advancing equity in housing and upholding fair housing practices, and is proud to provide the community with a rental housing mediation program established in 1976, which provides at no cost to participants education, eviction prevention, mediation with the successful out-of-court resolution of rental housing disputes, thereby assisting in the prevention of homelessness. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim April 2025 as Fair Housing Month. I thank the local fair housing advocates for their service to the community and urge community members to educate themselves to better understand and exercise their rights to equal housing opportunities. Hey, Andrea.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and distinguished council members. I'm Andrea Buffano, Rental Housing Mediation Program Supervisor. I've been serving the City of Santa Barbara, staffing the Rental Mediation Program for the past 38 years. It is an honor for me to accept this proclamation, and on behalf of the program, we're very pleased. This year, we celebrate nationwide the 57th anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968. This legislation was passed in response to the civil rights movement asking for equal housing opportunity for all. The act made discrimination in housing transactions, including rental housing, unlawful. The theme this year is Fair Housing, Together We Can. Yes, we can make a difference through awareness and education, beginning at the local level and community, which is the purpose of why we are here today, accepting this very important proclamation. Our community is very fortunate to have the rental housing City Council appointed 15-member volunteer mediators to the board. They bring various professional backgrounds and their experience as tenants, landlords, and homeowners to mediation. Together with program staff, they work hard at no cost to participants to find reasonable, fair, and equitable out-of-court solutions to rental housing disputes, thereby avoiding court litigation and potential homelessness. The concept of this program began at the grassroots level, out of need, and was established in 1976 out of the wisdom of the City of Santa Barbara Council. Standing in support of this proclamation with me here today is Laura Doubles, our Housing and Human Service Manager, Rental Mediation Program staff, Raymond Rango and Diana Santiago, Rental Housing Mediation Specialist, and board mediator members Cindy McCann, Howard Green, and Heather Smith. Thank you for your support and promotion of fair housing through this proclamation. It's a pleasure serving the City of Santa Barbara.
Thank you very much. Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not, Mayor.
Okay. We'll move to the consent calendar. Mr. Clerk, you have some items to read?
Yes, I have item 2, adoption of an ordinance approving a third amendment to the solar photovoltaic power purchase agreement with Action Energy to add rooftop solar to 117 Harbor Way. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the Sustainability and Resilience Director to execute a third amendment to the power purchase agreement with Action Energy to add 117 Harbor Way to the properties subject to the agreement. Item 3, proposed assignment of lease agreement number 24741, Shoreline Beach Cafe located at 801 Shoreline Drive. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara authorizing the waterfront director to execute the assignment of lease agreement number 24741 from Mr. Stephen Marsh, DBA Beach Rock Inc., to Mr. Oliver Pilar, DBA Palachinka LLC, for the Shoreline Beach Cafe located at 801 Shoreline Drive, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 4, amending Chapter 26.50 regarding tenant protection. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the municipal code by amending sections 26.50.040, 26.50.055, and 26.50.070, and the addition of section 26.50.090 relating to just cause evictions. Item 5, Master Environmental Assessment Guideline updates for historic resources, archaeological resources, and tribal cultural resources. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara adopting the Master Environmental Assessment Guidelines for historic resources. Adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara adopting the Master Environmental Assessment Guidelines for archaeological resources. And adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara adopting the Master Environmental Assessment Guidelines for tribal cultural resources, April 2025.
All right, very good. We'll be pulling item 4. There are some speaker slips on that, and I would like to vote on that separately. Are there any other items to pull off consent by council? Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I just have a question on item 5, but don't need to vote on it separately.
Okay, very good. So we'll pull item 5 as well. Are there speakers online for these items?
No hands raised, is it?
Okay, so, and I do recognize my speaker list for item 4, which will take in a few minutes. And if nothing else, we're going to vote on items 1 through 6. 7 is a consent public hearing that I'll open in a moment. Absent item 4 and item 5. May I have a motion and a second for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jordan, second by Harmon. Mr. Clerk?
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Councilmember Harmon, to move the balance of the consent calendar minus item 4. Go ahead and vote, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it was 5 as well. Absent 4 and 5.
Right, 4 and 5, did I?
Yeah, the clerk just
Yeah.
mentioned only 4.
None of my buttons are working, either my call button or my vote button, so.
Okay. We'll do it again. Sorry, Mike, you're out of the game. Roll call, please.
Okay, Councilmember Harmon,
Yes.
Councilmember Santa Maria,
Yes.
Councilmember Snedden,
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
and Mayor Rouse.
Aye. Very good. With that, we'll open the public hearing on item number 7. Would you read that into the record, please?
Yes, item 7, designation of proposed development at 531 East Ortega Street, Providence School as a community benefit project. Recommendation that council designate the proposed project at 531 East Ortega Street as a community benefit project pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code Chapter 30.170 and allocate 883 square feet net of additional non-residential floor area to the project from the non-residential growth management program's community priority project category.
Very good. Are there any public speakers on this item? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion on item 7.
So moved.
So moved by Harmon,
Second.
second by Gutierrez. May we have the vote on that, please? I guess, do we have to do a roll call vote? Because Mike's,
Yes, please.
okay?
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Harmon,
as well?
seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez to adopt the recommendation as made by staff. We'll start with Councilmember Santa Maria,
Yes.
Councilmember Snedden,
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Harmon,
Yes.
and Mayor Rouse.
Aye. All right, very good. And with that, we will close that public hearing. We'll take a report from the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At Finance Committee, we heard I guess not an update, but a report about the upcoming budget hearings where we heard about each department, and that information will be coming to council as well. We did not take action, just received the report. Thank you.
And a report from the Ordinance Committee, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. We heard an ordinance to amend municipal code relating to vessel insurance requirements in the Harbor District. It was unanimously recommended by Harbor Commission and then unanimously recommended by the Ordinance Committee to move forward to council.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to general public comment. And for general public comment, it's 3 minutes at the dais for anything that is not on today's agenda but remains within the purview of this body. And we'll start out with Mark Wolford, please.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Randy Rouse, Mayor and Oscar, everybody up there, Mike, and who else I know, Miss Megan. You guys, they were talking about this housing mediation stuff. Where I lived on the Mesa was quite a bit nicer than where I'm at now. I don't want to whine. I'm lucky I have a roof over my head, but what goes on underneath that roof, a couple separate things. I just talked to her. She said she was going to, Miss Bufano, that is. She's the one that got me in the housing in the first place, and I'm glad she got that award. She deserves it. And furthermore, that shellacking I took on the head over at the YMCA, I don't want to say it was foul play, but there wasn't anybody in either of those weight rooms at the time, and kind of woke me up. It took me a minute to catch on to it, but as I thought or thinking about it, why did it take so long for someone to get a chair? Because I got to my feet and I got to my towel and I applied some pressure to the wound. It was pretty bad. I mean, it could have took me out, and it's scary, and it's not the first time it's happened, and I'm not happy about it, but we gotta wing it, gotta go on with our lives. But I'll tell you, I'd sure be mighty obliged if someone could help me find a suitable place. I've got 4.5 years and going on 5 of complete sobriety. I take what the doctor gives me, no booze, no drug, nothing. I don't even mess with marijuana, nothing. And that's been left out in front of places for me to conveniently find, which I discard. Anyway, you guys, it's good to see you. everyone, and keep up the great work. This is a great town, and let's try to keep it that way. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Leanne Martindale?
Hello, Mayor Rouse, distinguished council members. I'm Leon Martindale, and I'm the director of the AmeriCorps program at United Way of Northern Santa Barbara County. And as you probably all are aware, there have been cuts to AmeriCorps across the country. This will affect 15,000 AmeriCorps members just in California. It'll affect 21 members here in Santa Barbara County. The federal government has made massive illegal cuts of $400 million to programs across the country that will impact countless lives of the most vulnerable. And I just wanted to give you an idea of the impact that our program here in Santa Barbara County, this is for the whole county, has had. The AmeriCorps members work for almost nothing. And they have significant impact. They don't have the budgets of some of the other homeless service providers, but in terms of housing, their impact is monumental. We have 8 members here in Santa Barbara County, but just to give you an idea, since we began our program in September of 2024, we've offered services. We've offered 4,076 services. That's 24 members across Santa Barbara County. We've offered services to veterans, 180 services to veterans, 347 services to youth. We've housed 80 people permanently here just in Santa Barbara County. We've referred 303 to transitional shelter, 8 veterans permanently that we've housed, 31 vets we've referred to transitional shelter, 11 youths we've housed permanently, 58 youths transitionally. And our motto is, and this is just really with shoestring budget and just really a lot of heart of the AmeriCorps members. And they range in age from 18 years old to their mid-60s. And the motto of AmeriCorps is, as we say, AmeriCorps members get things done. And so I just wanted to get that into the record. We would like, I think at some point, we'd like a proclamation from the City Council in support of AmeriCorps and our program. Thank you.
Melissa Horton?
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Horton. I'm a voting taxpayer and one of your constituents. I am one of the 8 members in the city of Santa Barbara that is affected by the dismemberment or suspension of the AmeriCorps program. My main job site is Santa Barbara City College. I also have a secondary site in Isla Vista. We have a CES site that serves the homeless community near UCSB. At my job site at Santa Barbara City College, I work with very vulnerable students. I work with transitional age youth, former foster, as well as formerly incarcerated students that are in the RISE. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. I'm so nervous. Anyways, what I want to say is that I myself am a former foster youth. I am a member of the formerly incarcerated that go to college. I have been able to access programs that have changed my life, and I took a position with AmeriCorps so that I could be able to help people that came from the same background as me achieve stability like I have. I have my own apartment, and in January I am transferring to Pepperdine University to pursue a Bachelor of Science in Business Management focusing on nonprofit work. I myself have personally helped house over 8 people in permanent housing. I have referred 50 people to shelter services. I'm currently working with a transitional age youth who has severe autism and is at City College. I've helped him sign up for IHSS benefits. I've helped him get into Tri-County regional centers and get a worker there. And I'm in the process of getting him into housing. One thing you should know about him, his mother passed away when he was 18, and he is 20 years old and alone in this world. I have worked with people that are formerly incarcerated like myself that struggle with addiction and alcoholism. I like to take on the more difficult cases. One of my more recent ones, I picked her up when I first became an AmeriCorps member. She was living beside the railroad tracks, under the influence, suffering from the disease of alcoholism, and now she's in shelter, getting ready to move into a sober living home, just got offered 2 jobs, one at Goodwill, one at Ralph's, and she has clean test. And this is the work that I put in to help these people, because I was there and I want to see them have the ability that I was given through the great programs that the city offers. I'm asking for the same thing that my supervisor was asking for you guys to give us a letter of support to argue our cause. I don't make very much money, but losing this income is devastating for me. I have my own apartment and a car payment, and I'm supposed to use my educational grant to fund my Pepperdine University. And I'm losing all of that because of these cuts that I've worked so hard for. I want to say thank you for the opportunities that the City Council has voted on for me, and that's it. Thank you.
Ann Arce?
Hello, Anna Arce. And so I initially became a member to gain experience through the Public Defender's Office. So that was my first site. Then I went into community outreach, and now this year I was a lead member. The reason why I joined AmeriCorps was because I wanted to expand my experience in the legal profession and gain that experience for law school. Through AmeriCorps, though, I was able to support a lot of Spanish-speaking clients and young mothers, such as my mom, who experienced instability, and unable to afford housing in Santa Barbara County, and me being able to provide that kind, warm, face and that voice for families who would otherwise not be able to be provided that, has impacted me very greatly through the AmeriCorps program. And as Melissa said, we don't get paid much. We monthly, when I was just an AmeriCorps member, my monthly stipend was about $1,200 every 2 weeks. So here in Santa Barbara County, and I would do catering on the side and try to, I'm also a mom. So you have to make do however you want, but I knew that the impact that I had for my community was more important. And I knew that my voice and my education was needed, and I don't take that for granted in any space that I'm in. And so that's why I like to inspire as well, the AmeriCorps members now as a lead member, to be able to show them that it's not just something that you check off on your resume or something that you put for education. Yes, that's how I started off, but I learned as I went that this is more than that, that this is an opportunity for us to really, truly make a difference in our community, and how important AmeriCorps is, how important homeless providers are here in our county in order to create change and to provide that long-term permanent housing. Last year, I alone was able to permanently house, not shelter bed, because that's a whole different number, but permanently house 18 families and individuals here in our county. I was also able to support individuals who would have stayed in custody and try to find alternatives for them as well, and as well as create new partnerships with local partners here in Santa Barbara County. So we do all that day to day, just as part of our service. Thank you.
Thank you. Liam Gallo?
Hello, Mayor Rouse and council members. I have a lot to cover. First, my name is Liam Gallo. I am Chief Impact Officer at the Northern Santa Barbara County United Way. We were a grantee of AmeriCorps federal funding. I administer the program with my colleague Leon Martindale. The first thing I want to do is convey some comments from AmeriCorps members that didn't get their slip in. Angelina, who serves with the Public Defender's Office, housing people that are criminally involved, says marginalized/poor people are trying to give back to those who are even less fortunate than us. We are worried about our clients. We are worried about our coworkers and everyone across the country who has been losing their jobs without a valid reason why. Another AmeriCorps member, Gina, I was recruited from my case manager with AmeriCorps when she found me on the track. I've been working hard to help others, and this is proof that doing the right thing can result in a person who may have been unhoused housing others. The AmeriCorps Partnership for People Experiencing Homelessness has been operating for 8 years. We operate with 10 community partners across the county. Half of those have bases here in Santa Barbara. We come to you at a critical time. Apparently, it's Fair Housing Month. What is fair housing but equity of access facilitated by people who know the process? You're looking at them. They're back there. Our call to action to you is something like awareness. I implore you to listen to us after the fact when we come to you with the resources you can use to engage other elected leaders, your colleagues. A declaration is nice, a proclamation of support, sure. Individualized conversations with any of your connections, grass top leaders, any at all. I should also give the update that our governor, Governor Newsom, declared that he was going to file a lawsuit last week. Over the weekend, he reiterated that. Today, there has been an announcement of a multi-state lawsuit in the works with several attorney generals. There's like 28 of them. I have the information here. I don't have enough time to relay it. So another call is to review that information as it comes out. I'll repeat the numbers. $400 million worth of grants. That's about half of what's typically offered in a year. 15,000 AmeriCorps members across the state, 21 in our county, 8 here in Santa Barbara. They have an outsized impact. My colleague spoke to that. Per dollar invested in them, the amount of opportunity afforded to their neighbors that they bring, it's incomparable. There is something about AmeriCorps programming that brings out the best in our citizenry. I think it is the best case for the United States and how we can help each other. I think AmeriCorps dollars do that. And so in the way that you can help us, it's a less strategic approach because we found out over the weekend. Our state commission got notice on Friday. My program got notice Sunday, 4 p.m. We had to cease member activity. Their stipends had to be halted. Help us.
Thank you. Quick announcement, I've taken the last speaker slip. We're running out of time of public speaking. So the last one that turned in was Mr. Green, he'll be last. And then we have some speakers online as well. But first we have MJ LaFleur.
Hi, my name is MJ LaFleur, and I want to tell everybody here thank you. And I want to tell my neighbors thank you. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. We're talking about fair housing. And I am very grateful to Santa Barbara. I think it's an amazing place to live. There are so many facilities like New Beginnings, the Good Shepherds, AmeriCorps that help people. I got sick. I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing any of that. I got sick, and I was incapable of taking care of myself. I don't have extended family to assist me, so I found myself living in my car. AmeriCorps came and helped me out. They got me in contact with other organizations. They helped save my life. So please note that. However, I sadly also want to bring to attention that in order for me to get housing, I had to give up the right to have a car of my own that could transport myself. There are times when I'm physically not able to walk, and I am finding it very difficult to survive without a vehicle of my own. Transporting my groceries on the bus, transporting my laundry on the bus is troublesome not only for the drivers because they're asking me to take my stuff out of my bags that have wheels on it so that I can put it somewhere else, and then there's no places to sit, so it's very difficult. So when we're talking about fair housing, I would like to bring the attention in that if somebody has a vehicle, if somebody has registered a vehicle, if somebody's maintained their vehicle, they shouldn't have to give up their ability to transport themselves in order to have a roof over their head. Because having a roof over your head when you're not able to go places can bring a lot of anxiety. And so Please continue to support the organizations that are giving people the opportunity to stay alive, that are giving people the opportunity to stay safe, that are giving them the opportunity to make their lives better by taking the next step. But please don't take away from them the resources that allow them to actually function, because if I have a house, I have safety. If I have a car, I have a way to get to places. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Green?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I was here today really as backup for the proclamation, but the speakers have motivated me to at least raise a couple of questions for you. I'm enjoying working on the mediation group, and earlier we heard the lady from United Way basically ask your support for AmeriCorps. I have no knowledge of that group, but I would like to recognize United Way for hosting and housing tax preparers. I've been doing that for the last 3.5 months, and it's another program that they do that I think is worthwhile. I'm also your representative on the Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens. And we basically have the job, staff and volunteers, to administer some federal funding and state funding for a number of senior services and disability. I'm very concerned because the federal organization that has been funding, I guess, these activities is being abolished. I'm sure that there are some plans to shift some of the programs, but I would hope that the city, along with other cities and counties, can express concern and try to figure out how to solve the problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, are there speakers online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are 2 speakers online, Jacqueline Inda and Carrie Weber. Jacqueline Inda, if you can please go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, hi. My name is Jacqueline Inda. I am on Zoom because I wanted to inform you on behalf of Casa de la Raza that the federal government created a whole bunch of executive orders yesterday that impact our Latino community. The risk of losing important protections in this state, like the Truth Act, and other things that are very viable to the resiliency of this community are now in jeopardy, along with the fact that one of the executive orders would allow excess military to go into cities of this area is frightening to not just folks that have residency, but also people who have citizenship and people who have been a part of this community that do not have status. I urge you to start to think about creating an emergency proclamation to activate our emergency responses in this community to provide education to those who will quickly need it once these 90 days are over and those particular executive orders start to roll out in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and within the city. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Carrie Weber. Carrie Weber, if you can please unmute yourself. Carrie Weber.
All right, with that, we will close general public comment and move on to our pulled consent items for discussion. We'll go to item 4, and we have some speakers on that. Florette Janigian, I'm not going to get that last name, Janigian. Is that close?
It was close. I'm Florette Janigian. I believe the just cause evictions ordinance and recent amendments should be clarified before being voted on. The section allowing a qualified tenant to re-rent for a period of up to 2 years needs clarification on what it truly means to be a qualified tenant. Nowhere in the ordinance that I can see does it address the landlord's right to revet a returning tenant to check their employment status or ability to pay after 2 years. Is the city maintaining a landlord must make a contractual offer to a former tenant who 2 years from now may be unemployed or no longer have the ability to pay rent? Perhaps this wording needs clarification, allowing for a landlord to check that a tenant can still afford an apartment 2 years later. If not, the city could be responsible for defaulted rent. In addition, the section capping the rent increase after major construction shares some similarities to the Felke case. Even in rent-controlled Los Angeles, a landlord is able to raise rents to prevailing market rate after spending a certain amount. Preventing a landlord from doing this may render limitations to what they can do with their rental property and may cause financial hardship. Another point, your appeals process should be thought out and well established, and maybe even establishing forms before this ordinance is made law. Otherwise, the only remedy you give affected landlords is through a lawsuit, and the damages may start happening immediately. Maybe you can consider these things and clarifying them before you make your vote today. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anna Arsene?
Okay, and then after this, I have one more comment, so I'll see y'all a lot today. Mine's really short. I'm here in support to the amendments for the stronger tenant protections in Santa Barbara County, and thank you, all council members, for your commitment for stronger tenant protections and to continue the ongoing conversation for rent stabilization and housing affordability in Santa Barbara County. So that's all I have to say today, so thank you.
Thank you. Dave Diaz?
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a longtime resident of Santa Barbara, born in St. Francis Hospital 76 years ago. Vietnam-era veteran, and now I am living in a subsidized, fixed income area because I do not make enough money to live here. 10 years ago, I was ready to retire, told my kids I was ready to move away. They told me, no, Dad, you're not. So they helped me get housing. Well, housing wasn't my bag at all. It was okay, it was great, because I wanted to stay in Santa Barbara, but it wasn't my bag. I ended up getting a housing kind of grant at the Elegy. Allergy? I can never say that word. And now, Edgerly, there you go. And now it's up for sale. And now we don't know what's going to happen to us. There's no room for us out here in Santa Barbara at this present moment. I've lived here all my life, and it was the last moment we thought this was a place I was going to pass away because it was affordable for me. But now with their being sold and no way of going anywhere, it looks like I may have to move again. We have at least a third of the people in the LG cannot afford to move. They have no place to go. I'm lucky I have 3 kids here that will help me move and go someplace. I wish to thank you for all the stuff you have done already, and that I hope that you guys can help facilitate more ways for moderate income people to live here. I'd love to stay here for the rest of my life, which may not be much longer, but I'm had triple bypass surgery survivor, so I'm doing good. I thank you.
Thank you. Angelisa Sanchez?
Hi, good afternoon, council members, mayor. I just wanted to uplift what my coworker Anna mentioned and thanking you all for voting yes, especially Sneddon and Santa Maria, Megan, and Gutierrez. Again, just wanted to say thank you for listening to the voice of your constituents and upholding the issue that is very real here in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanley Zankoff?
Hello again, Mayor and council members. Last time I was here, I actually got really emotional unexpectedly and kind of broke down on this topic, even though I'm so intimately familiar with it. And that's because I was thinking of how many people had been forced to pack up their things, move out of their homes and move out of the area because we had acted, sadly, too late for them. But today I hope we'll also celebrate that we've gotten here, that we've passed this incredibly important protection for tenants that lies, in the hopes and dreams of folks who have been terrified that this will happen to them as they get the next notice on their door. So I hope as we look at all of the other things that we need in the city, whether it's helping our working families, whether it's passing rent stabilization, as I know I'm a broken record on that, or whatever it is, I hope we do it right, but we also do it in time. But I'm not here to nag about that. I just really want to say thank you so much. I know council members Sneddon, Harmon, and Oscar Gutierrez, you've been doing this for years. You've been showing up time and time again on this. And council member Wendy Santamaria, you've been doing this long before you were on council and haven't lost sight of your values to be a champion for these since you are now sitting there. I want to convey the outpouring of support I've been getting all week in my texts and my Instagram DMs and emails and people literally just breaking down and crying tears of joy and laughter. This is a huge win for the community. I think it'll be cherished for decades to come. I think this is the right side of history. And I hope that, as we look towards the long list of things on your priorities. I know that's it's really long on staff's plate, on council members, that we get a chance to celebrate, pat ourselves on the back, and just really thank you so much.
All right, very good. Mr. Clerk, are there speakers online for that item?
No speakers online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to item 5. Ms. Sneddon, you pulled the item. You have a comment?
I did. I have questions and maybe a couple of comments, and I apologize I didn't reach out ahead of time on this one, but I guess the question I'm concerned about, just want to hear about, is on Part D for the tribal cultural resources. If you could just really give us details of sort of how that process went, who you had an opportunity to meet with, if it has the full seal of approval moving forward. So first I have questions about that.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Seddon, and council members, thank you for your interest in this project. We're very excited to be here. This is a culmination of a year plus of work. And today we are asking that council repeal the 2002 Master Assessment Guidelines for Archaeological and Historic Resources and adopt in their place guidelines for historic resources, archaeological resources, and tribal cultural resources. Today we have our consultant, David Stone, archaeologist, with us as well. And to talk a little bit about the process for tribal cultural resources, this came about because staff had recognized that the 2002 guidelines had places that were not compliant with current state legislation and that they required an update to be current with the existing setting. And it also aligned with Program 9 of the housing element, which is to review our environmental procedures and streamline where opportunities exist. And staff felt strongly that we couldn't update those guidelines without also recognizing tribal cultural resources, because archaeological resources in many cases are also tribal in nature. And there's also been important state legislation since 2002 that specifically addressed tribal cultural resources. And so we felt that they also warranted specific guidelines to help staff implement those at the local level. And so we engaged with our consultant to lead the preparation of the tribal cultural resources guidelines along with archaeological guidelines. And we also did outreach to tribal representatives that were listed on the Native American Heritage Commission list. And specifically, we engaged with the Barbareño Band, who is the band associated with this region, as well as the other tribal representatives that were on the contact list. And we held a series of working meetings, and we gave them preliminary drafts to peer review and provide feedback. And representatives, and particularly the Barbareño Band, Eleanor Fishburne, also gave us important cultural context that we also included in the tribal guidelines as well. And so with the Tribal Cultural Resources Guidelines, we hope that these will facilitate a productive and collaborative consultation with tribal representatives in our area, and help us to build those relationships with the Chumash community going forward.
Thank you so much. And if there should be any updates or there are issues that arise, that conversation remains open, and we could make updates or amendments to this as we go.
Excuse me, Councilmember Sen, do you mean updates to the guidelines?
To the guidelines.
Yes, Councilmember Sneddon, the Community Development Director, I believe we are asking as part of this process that the Community Development Director is able to make administrative updates if minor and if felt necessary.
Thank you so much, because it's a new element of it in that way, and I think it would be important that as it's put into use that there may be adjustments needed, and I think it's I really commend the open conversation, and I think it's important to keep that open. This is a very small comment. I'm very grateful that this is part of it. In the staff report, it mentions the Chumash as past tense. Chumash people inhabited the Santa Barbara and Channel Island region. I would suggest that anytime we talk about Chumash, we say inhabit or present tense. And there's another reference there too, just further down in the paragraph, that colonial impacts disrupted their traditional way of life, and I would say it's disrupt. So present tense with Chumash, and really appreciate that this is a part of the conversation and to keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a public speaker on this item, Eleanor Fishburne.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Samthanit Eleanor Fishburne. I am the tribal chair of service to the Barbareño Band of Chumash Indians, and we worked diligently with the city staff, and we had a great reciprocation going on. It was nice to be able to express the needs in the document, and those needs are the protection of our culture, basically. And yes, thank you. We are still here, and we are working diligently to revitalize our culture and taking charge and moving forward. And again, I just want to thank the city of Santa Barbara for their openness and willingness to work with us and to keep those open lines of communication, and the reciprocation here. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and take a motion on the vote on item 5, and then we'll go back and do the same on item 4. So,
I'll move item 5.
item moved by Sneddon,
Second.
seconded by Harmon. May we, roll call vote, I guess.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon to move the recommendation as made by staff. And we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. The Councilmember Sneddon,
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
No, or I'm sorry, yes.
Councilmember Harmon,
Yes.
Councilmember Santa Maria,
Yes.
and Mayor Rouse.
Yes, aye. Very good. Okay, let's go to item 4. May we have a roll call vote? Oh, we have, let's do a motion. That's a great idea.
So
I'd like-
moved. Oh. Go ahead.
I can second.
Oh, knock yourselves out. Do
Okay,
one at
well,
a time.
so moved. There we go.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Santa Maria, second by Sneddon. Now let's have a.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Santa Maria and seconded by Councilmember Sneddon to adopt the recommendation as made by staff. Councilmember Gutierrez,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
No.
Councilmember Harmon,
Yes.
Councilmember Santa Maria,
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon,
Yes.
and Mayor Rouse.
No. Thank you. Okay, well, it closes the consent item. We'll move on to item 8. You have an item to read, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, item 8, Santa Barbara Airport Fixed Base Operator Redevelopment Update.
Okey-doke, Director Hastert.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and council members. Happy to be here to finally bring forward an update on our FBO RFP process and redevelopment. As a part of the recommendation is also to seek your input on the selection criteria and some of the community benefits that we will be looking for through this process as we go through to select the different FBOs for the airport. Just to start off with, some of you may or may not be familiar with what an FBO is. So an FBO is a fixed base operator. They basically touch almost every aspect of the airport. So we currently have 2 fixed base operators, Signature Aviation and Atlantic Aviation. And they handle everything from fueling aircraft to handling transient aircraft coming in and out of the facility. A lot of our base tenants are actually based with either of those facilities. So anything from just a small operator of a single engine airplane that is just for recreation, all the way to business owners who happen to have their own airplane to go fly around, meet with customers, whatever it may be. They also handle all of the corporate traffic that comes into the airport for flight planning, for fueling, for catering, for coordinating rental cars, just everything associated with the aspect of aviation at the airport. A lot of people associate FBOs with general aviation at the airport, but they are also tied in with the commercial service at the airport as well, as they provide the fueling for all of the airlines at the Santa Barbara Airport, as well as when an airline may have an issue or a mechanical issue, oftentimes those aircraft end up over on FBO property to be able to allow the mechanics to come in. So we currently have the 2 FBOs at the airport on somewhat short-term leases now, and we, as the city, are kind of in the way of that project development to allow for a lot of capital investment to be invested into the Santa Barbara Airport. So the process that we are currently going through is to issue a request for proposals to basically invite firms to propose on providing those services at the airport. I'll talk about this in just a minute, but we have in our master plan space for 2 FBOs, and we are splitting that process to start first with an RFP for a single FBO to be then added on with the second FBO. And that's all about timing, because we can't have construction of everything happening all at the same time, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. As I mentioned, they offer aeronautical services such as fuel sales, hangar rentals, aircraft maintenance, all while complying with FAA standards for fuel quality, all of those issues. So one of the questions that I'm often asked is, why are we issuing an RFP? We have 2 very capable FBOs here on the field with Signature Aviation and Atlantic. the issuing an RFP is definitely no reflection on any issues that we have with our current operators. They are definitely very good FBO operators, nationally known with many locations throughout the world. So this is really to focus on a number of different topics, such as compliant with best practices for procurement. We want this to be a very open process. The FAA does not require us to do an RFP. However, if somebody were to make a complaint against the Santa Barbara Airport that we are unfairly keeping them out of the airport, not going through an RFP process would be much harder to defend who we currently have on the airport. Encouraging competition. We don't know what all competition is out there. We're very familiar with our two existing FBOs and know they're very successful, but we don't know who else is out there. Ensuring long-term viability. So we're talking about entering into decades of lease term here with a significant capital investment into the airport. I have heard numbers in the tens of millions all the way up to close to $100 million, depending on what the proposals come in and how much ramp space and hangar space and all of that. So we're talking about a significant investment. So we definitely want to make sure that who we select has the long-term viability and the finances to be able to bring forward those projects. We want to make sure that whatever proposals come forward align with our master plan goals and meeting the demand at the airport. And then also, probably the most important part of this process is transparency and community confidence. We have a lot of interest in the FBOs at the airport, both on airport and off airport in the business community and with our hangar owners and tenants that definitely want to see this process be successful and have two very good developments with our two future FBOs, whether they are current incumbents or new ones coming in. For those of you that have been on the council for a while, you've probably heard about this FBO RFP process for a number of years, and it's very unfortunate. Even as I look back through the history, looking at some old commission meetings back from 2020, they expected to have it out in the fall of 2020. We're now in 2025, and that is not lost on us. We are moving forward as quickly as possible to get this RFP out. We have been working with legal counsel, with some outside firms to develop the RFP. We've got it narrowed down to just a couple of minor legal questions and a quick review of the final draft lease to be able to get that out. So timing-wise, I'm really shooting for by the end of June, if not before that, to have this document ready to be issued with the feedback that we received today. Some of the issues that we have surrounding this RFP and why there were so many questions and why there's been delays is it's a large area on the northeast corner of the airport that has the old restaurant, it has our administrative building, and so there's been a lot of questions as to what's going to happen with all of that. And I have a couple of slides just to talk about that in a second, but our administrative building is in the heart of what will be the new FBO area, and the airport administration has gone back and forth on the ability or the desire to move out of that facility. We have landed very solidly with the decision to get out of the way of the FBO's areas. It's taking up prime real estate that is really needed for aviation, and our administrative buildings can be anywhere. They don't even have to be on the airfield side of the building. We're very fortunate, and I'll talk about this in just a second, to have a new location for that. So we also are looking at leases. So our leases are not very well aligned with moving forward with this process. We currently have leases that expire for FBO properties at different times, and then we have fuel farm facilities, which are required to go along with the FBOs, that expire a couple of years beyond those FBO facilities. So working with our legal counsel and working with our consultants, we were able to package an RFP together that will allow us to move forward. And depending on who is selected, there are different paths that we will have to take. So if one of the current FBOs is not selected, it will provide a bigger challenge for us to deal with either negotiating out of a lease early or potentially extending the leases for the current FBO to allow for the termination of that lease, while simultaneously a new FBO coming in could be working on the process for that development. Our desire is to sign a new lease, have whoever the selected FBOs are operate the facility as they construct the new facilities, but we are not going to hold up this process because there's things that we can't answer until we make a selection. We're going to keep this moving forward. One of the other challenges was just putting together all of the information to put into the RFP. The RFP submission portion of it is very short, but we are providing a lot of information to the different proposers to make sure that they understand what they are getting into. Things like facility condition reports, our master plan, building guidelines within the city of Santa Barbara for those that may not be familiar. We're probably working with architects that are at the national level, not necessarily here in Santa Barbara, that don't understand all of our process. And then the hardest part was just all of the unanswered questions. And even when we brought this to our commission, there continues to be a number of questions that come up that we don't have the answers to until we put this out, receive those proposals in, and fine-tune what those developments are going to look like. And a lot of those concern our existing tenants on the airport. We have a number of old hangars that are unfortunately in a bad area where they're going to be redeveloped. So what does that mean during construction? What does that mean for how many are going to be accommodated? Those are questions that we can't fully answer until we bring back the proposals and go through those. One of the things that we are challenged with staff is also existing tenants, and we have a demand that far exceeds the amount of space that we currently have out there. You will see that the RFP area expands the area for the FBO, which will allow for more airplanes. That gets into questions about what does that mean for noise and what does that mean for the level of activity at the airport. I'm happy to share with you most of those airplanes are still being served in one way or another coming into Santa Barbara. If they don't have a home here, it usually results in extra operations, meaning that if they can't base their airplane here, they may base it somewhere, and with a business jet, it could be as far away as Nevada or Arizona or somewhere else. The plane comes in, picks up their passenger, leaves again, comes back in, drops off their passenger, leaves again. So you have extra operations if we're not able to accommodate the aircraft that really meet the needs of our community here. So I mentioned the local challenges, the first being our administrative building. So we have identified Building 245. A lot of you that have been in the community for a while are familiar with it as the old Deckers building. That's where the Deckers headquarters was decades ago. It's currently a vacant building. It's about twice the size of what we need for administration and would require some significant investment. So we have in our current budget coming for your approval funds to provide for our relocation into that building. In the RFP, there's actually a section where if the FBOs want to provide some type of incentive for our relocation, that is something that they can put in there as well. We briefly mentioned the restaurant. So the restaurant has hit the news. Actually, just yesterday, it was in a Newshawk article, the Old Elephant Bar. So the airport has signed a short-term lease with something called the Goleta Spot. It's basically an operator, a local operator that's coming in, bringing some 4 or 5 food trucks together. Those food trucks will rotate through, providing food as a single point of sale within the Old Elephant Bar restaurant with table service as well. Nobody will be ordering from the food trucks specifically, but the reason why it's food trucks is this is a short-term lease. We gave them a 1-year lease with some options that are totally at the airport's understanding of what the current status is of the FBO RFP process, whether we proceed with those options or not through this process. And it's really limited to require almost no modifications to the restaurant. If a new operator were to come into the restaurant, there would be significant improvements required for the kitchen and for other areas. This allows us to use some temporary use of that restaurant space, not tied with the FBO RFP process, although we have encouraged the operator to speak to both of our current FBOs as well as anybody that may propose on it for a potential solution for the long term for them to be able to stay in some fashion. But I just wanted to let you know that in the 2017 master plan, we showed that area being carved out. We were not going to include that in the FBO RFP as it shows on the figure on the left for 2017. Our new 2025 master plan update does actually show that entire area being within the FBO area. So I mentioned we're starting with one of the 2 FBO areas, and so that is what we're calling the East FBO site. That is the area where Signature Aviation currently has their main admin building and hangar. It's actually one of the easier spaces to develop because it doesn't have as many of the T-hanger tenants in that area. And so we figured that that was the best one to start with because we would inconvenience the least amount of current tenants. And then hopefully as the phasing goes on, some of those tenants would be able to be accommodated in the east site as the west site moves forward. A lot of the questions that came up with the commission and with a lot of our tenants are what is being included in the RFP and what are we asking for? And everybody had a ton of ideas and a ton of issues that they wanted accommodated in the RFP. There's must-haves. We have our airport minimum standards that the council has recently updated, and that requires a certain level of development for an RFP, including terminal space for transient aircraft up to about 5,000 square feet, hangar space 40,000 square feet, T-hanger or box hangar space of about 10,000 square feet. Those are all the minimums as it is minimum standards. I fully anticipate that all of the proposals are going to come in quite more extravagant than just what is in the minimum standards. But we didn't want to dictate exactly what has to be put into their proposal, like, you know, we want 25,000 square feet of T-hangers, because in the master plan, the demand for small aircraft storage is accommodated through FBOs, but also some future projects that we as the airport, as the city have to add on additional city hangars. And so to dictate everything that would be required in an RFP above and beyond the minimum standards, in our opinion, leaves us very little to evaluate for those proposals. So in the current draft RFP, it really is set, the minimum bar is the minimum standards. And so we obviously have selection criteria that we'll talk about in just a minute that accomplishes some of the other goals that you may have. But we are not going forward with a certain number of T-hangers or a certain level of space required for any of the services other than what is in the minimum standards, which is the document that the council has already approved. The response timeline, I apologize, this slide was actually, I messed up a little bit. The response timeline originally was 120 days. We brought this presentation to the Airport Commission, and through discussion, they requested that we reduce that response time to 60 days. And in conversations I've had with different people who are interested, that appears to be plenty of time to put this proposal together and submit it. We obviously will take any input that you have on this as well. So in the slide, it actually says that we could actually reduce that amount of time. I don't recommend reducing it below the 60 days. Just want to set expectations. Obviously, you're very aware of the development timelines in the city of Santa Barbara, California, just in general. This is a process that we anticipate once we select the proposed FBOs, that it's going to be a 2.5 to 3 year wait before we see any activity actually happening out there with just all of the development plans coming forward, architectural review, all of that. There are ways for them to expedite that process by doing certain things simultaneously, but this is definitely not something where you're going to see a development starting within 6 months of us selecting an RFP. So this is going to be a lengthy process and a lot of further involvement to refine the concepts that come in through this proposal. I mentioned that we have 2 future FBOs. We are starting with an RFP for the east site. Once we go through this process, we have stated in the current RFP that the second site is coming online and that we will have a process that may or may not mimic this exact process with this exact RFP. I anticipate that we're going to learn a lot as we receive these proposals in and see if there's a way to either expedite or modify that process for the second selection. Worst case scenario is we will proceed very quickly with a second RFP for the west site. Final 2 slides. Now we get down to the selection criteria, and this is where we're asking for a little bit of council input as well. I'm going to go through the 2 slides, and then I'll go back to the first one in case there's any questions, because there's 2 pages worth of criteria. So in the RFP, we are asking them to provide a financial plan that includes activity forecasts, capital investment, financial capability, references, and proposed payments and capital expenditures for the first 5 years of the lease. We are asking them for a development plan to make sure that it's compatible with the Santa Barbara Airport Master Plan, environmental compliance, facility design, quality of improvements, and the schedule, including any phasing. And we anticipate, we have opened up the areas to include additional space that is not currently used by the FBOs. So it's very likely they could come in and just want to develop the whole thing all at one time, or they may want to phase it as they ramp up their operation. We're asking for a business plan, including their marketing strategies, operational efficiency, adaptation to market trends, competitive pricing, management and operations plan, maintenance plan for all of the facilities that they put in, and just how they're going to elevate the current standards that we have. They're operating out of very dated facilities, definitely not what you would expect if you were flying in from somewhere else around the world into Santa Barbara, which is definitely a world-renowned place to visit. Our FBO facilities don't currently reflect that. This is a new one that was not discussed at the commission. We had to tweak our RFP just a little bit, so we added a workforce development and community engagement section. That is really focused around recruitment, training, development, career advancement of the people who will be working at the RFP, as well as any community partnerships that they potentially see. I know a lot of FBOs sometimes partner with community colleges or other groups locally to help feed that workforce. And then the other side of the community is the community benefits. So airport and community economic impact, job creation, community service, environmental stewardship. As you know, the FBOs are really, other than the airport department ourselves, our only connection with the community for the most part for events. So the plane pole, events that just bring kids out to the airport to experience aviation, that's all done on property that is leased by the FBOs. And then miscellaneous, just anything else that you see that you would like to be able to evaluate, such as their safety record, any current legal issues, other programs or criteria that we don't have accommodated with what we're asking for in the RFP, they can put into the RFP to help elevate their proposal over that of their competitors. I just really briefly, before we receive the input, wanted to share with you that we did take this to our commission, and other than the workforce development, which they were not able to comment on because that was additional, most of the focus was very evenly spread across all of those criteria. It's really hard to select one and say that's more important than another because they're all very important. We have some very business-minded folks on our commission that were very focused on the development plan and the business plan to make sure they were financially viable to go, decades into the future at the airport, and to also support any changes in the industry as it may come on with like hydrogen fuel or electrification, things like that. And then we equally had a large contingent that were focused on the community, that focused around outreach to kids and aviation, events like the plane pole, and then also the benefit for membership. Our two current FBOs are members of the chamber. They support the business community and local events. So that community focus was kind of split evenly with the development plans and the financial viability. So with that, that is the end of the presentation and the update. Happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding any of that, and then also hopefully receive some of your comments for what you would like to have our staff and whichever panels are selected to review the proposals to evaluate the criteria.
Great, thank you, Director Hastert. Since this is not an action item, I'm going to go ahead and take the couple of public speakers first, and then we'll go and combine questions and comments together. So I'll start with Troy Scott.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members. I'm Troy Scott. I am the Area General Manager for Signature here at Santa Barbara and LAX. I wanted to come up here and voice our support and appreciation for this RFP. I've done this in Hawaii and at Seattle, and contrary to what Chris says, I think you guys are moving along pretty darn fast compared to what I've experienced before. So be that what it is.
I heard that very often.
Yep, I know. I would also like to recognize Chris and his airport crew and the other stakeholders for all the support they're doing bringing this to fruition. We really look forward to an FBO and are excited about the opportunity. We've been a partner in Santa Barbara for quite a few years, and we look forward to maybe working forward with you guys in the future as well. We're excited to take part in this RFP process and have already begun as much work as we can leaning forward to work on those RFPs and come up with plans that I think will be meeting the needs that are going to be developed by y'all. That's all I had. I just wanted to come up and say thank you, and I'm available anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Broderick.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and fellow city council members. My name is Julie Broderick. I'm with Atlantic Aviation. I've been with the company, or in the FBO business for over 30 years, and also in the Santa Barbara area. With me is Cass Corral. She is the general manager for Atlantic Santa Barbara. Cass grew up in Carpinteria, started her customer service 14 years ago, moved up the ranks, and now is our general manager. We share the staff's enthusiasm for reaching this point and the much anticipated RFP process, and appreciate the significant amount of work airport leadership and staff have done to get to this point. We have enjoyed collaborating with the city creatively and flexibly, meeting the airport's needs during the interim period as we worked towards the RFP. Atlantic Aviation serves as FBO in 104 airports across the country, and Santa Barbara is one of the best to work with. For the last 16 years, Atlantic has enjoyed partnering with the city and the airport to work towards meeting the city's and community's goals for this property. As you know, having a trusted partner is essential for the successful operation and service delivery in an industry where safety, customer service, and reliability are critical. As an essential part of Atlantic's Santa Barbara location is its professional team. This talented group of 20 employees grew up, many of them, right here in town. We are committed to and invested in Santa Barbara, both in our roles at Atlantic Aviation and as engaged volunteers. We work alongside you at schools, with students and families, in support of local nonprofits, and at beloved community events. We are your friends and your neighbors. With our response to this RFP, we hope to remain a trusted partner at Santa Barbara for the long term. We're extremely excited to help the city transform the airport to a modern, more sustainable operation that continues to safely and effectively meet the needs of local aviation community and its visitors. One of the most exciting things about the process is the opportunity we have to unleash the airport's true potential for the city, also in terms of concrete benefits for the broader community. Opportunities abound through partnerships, and we look forward to continuing to invest and work together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any speakers online, Mr. Clerk?
No speakers online.
Okay, very good. We'll take it back to council. I know Mr. Jordan is trying to wave at me over there because his button doesn't work, and I have Ms. Sneddon. So whichever one you would like to go first, go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take a little credit for why this is here. So I want to say that I share all the goals that Chris started out with. Everything he's talked about, I share. But no, it's not even a bad but, it's just a but. But, you know, it's clear to me today when you drive down Hollister Avenue or when you kids are in your 30s now that post 9/11, environmental improvements we've made out at the airport with the way the creeks run, at the new terminal, that the evolution of the airport has led to a little disconnect with the members of the community that aren't necessarily using the airport every day. And my goal is to, just as you presented some of the criteria, is to get past this this tension of we're not going to dictate anything more. We're going to set these standards, but we're not going to dictate a higher level. But then, if not, that we actually credibly recognize those who over-propose well above those levels and propose in areas that maybe traditionally aren't historical ways that FBOs and airports and communities have participated together. And this happens so infrequently that it is truly a generational opportunity to leverage those relationships. I mean, this will be a decades-long relationship you set up with a couple FBOs, so it's getting past my generation. And so it's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to look for those collaborations. When you combine that with the airport's relatively unique in our budget enterprise status, where you only get to spend what you earn, this also provides a pathway for us to actually look towards private operators to help fund things that the airport can't earn enough money to do, right? So I have a long list. So as I've been thinking about this for a long time, I'll talk slow and you can go back and do this, but the larger goals I have here are that we end up being in a position where our RFP recognizes FBOs who bring more to the table than we're just requiring, that actually, hate the phrase, think outside the box, but I'm going to help you think what Mike Jordan's box is anyhow. And we end up with more than just a usual historical FBO Santa Barbara Airport relationship. I would actually use the word placemaking in some of this too, because just for a parent who grew up taking 4 kids under 8 years old at one time out to Elephant Bar, the placemaking engagement that the airport had on families is really important, whether that's a restaurant, educational opportunities, events, historic hangars in a museum, whatever that may look like to somebody out there to bring to the table. I want to make sure that we're open to recognizing that and giving them enough credit so that we're not over-crediting for stuff that is normal template, airport, FAA, minimum standards, but we're making those people meet those standards, but then the ones that rise above that, we're giving an adequate pathway to rank them and rate them as better than those who didn't do that. So, on my list, obviously, and on your list, is a collaborative role in a food and beverage operation, whether that's having one for the public, participating in making it happen, recognizing that involves the gamut from people who fly in and want a food and beverage operation, families or individuals who just drive up Hollister Avenue and want to experience something on-site at an airport in view of planes taking off and landing or some aviation activity. And I don't want to say what that is. I just want to put that thought out there and have people come and tell us what that looks like or what they can do to do that, and then you can rank them on what the best one is. I'm pretty flexible in that. I also think that visitor serving industries in the city in general contribute obviously to a greater burden on our housing stock than higher earning industries, and anything an FBO successful submission can do to help with that by contribution to either funding for their own employees' housing or for the general industry at large is a plus. I know you're about to have an airport days or something, but I know that decades ago we used to have really big events there. You and I have even talked in the past about the difficulty of air shows happening here when air shows happen everywhere else too. But I think in general, events, educational, historical efforts, or simply having the availability to watch planes take off and land are a community attachment dynamic that begins to endear people to both aviation and an airport and provide that connection back to the community. The historical hangars are also on my list as an opportunity for collaboration. And I would probably say historical hangars / museum. I see some form of opportunity there for private-public participation that utilizes those, or another opportunity, again, to get people out to the airport, whether it's children in an educational setting, whether it's the generation before me, veterans that used to fly in planes in the war or something and could see the memorabilia, or people in between who are just looking to learn about that. That is also on my list. And then I think, don't know what I'm talking about, but I think there's also a role for FBOs in the city to play a greater collaborative role in small plane general aviation, whether that's additional tie-downs, space in hangars when they're not being used, that type of thing, but a general fostering of a pathway for new pilots to participate at the airport, and what role can a private company or set of private companies who are coming in play in that role with the city. And then I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that could be pointed towards the future. And I just dump them in a sustainability category. So what are the buildings going to look like from a sustainability category? Are they going to carry their own weight for electric generation? Are they going to be gas-free? That type of thing. What are they going to do to help traffic on and off the airport grounds? What are they going to do to help parking? I don't know, I only know enough to be dangerous, but I know there's a difference in levels on sustainable aviation fuel, that we're behind the industry on that, because trucking it up here right now would kind of negate the gain on using, say, 50% sustainable aviation fuel. So what role can the FBO play with the airport to move us towards using the highest level of sustainable aviation fuel that we can, rather than a lower one? And then when the heck are the electric hoppers coming, and are they ready for that and planning for that? Or will that have to enter into a whole nother master plan process? But I swear they're right there, right after I don't get in the Tesla that drives itself. I'll get in the electric hopper, right? And then an international customs thought too. I hear a lot from people that because once you come back to the United States, you have to stop at your first airport you get to. So if you're coming back from Mexico, you're stopping somewhere way down south, and then coming home to your home airport. And not only does that say, don't use us, not that it's our fault, but it's also a loss of revenue for that too. And so what does it take? What does that market out there look like? How many people are stopping San Diego or somewhere down there, and then having to come up here, that could just come up here, and we continue to capture that customer as the home site, plus the revenue it would have. And then last thought is, well, I have two more thoughts. We talked about the Taylor project too, about the horrible timeline that you have, just like the horrible timeline everybody has going through community development. And is an FBO willing to bring financial resources to get their own planner or planners with the development process, so that you can cut that timeline down? I have no doubt in the last 5 years, probably when they were, I think before I got elected, when I was running for office, there were people walking around talking about this process and trying to talk up support. In 5 years, this project for any FBO has probably gone up $10 million, $5 or $10 million, just because of construction costs and timelines. So the more we can scrunch that process down by attacking the process with somebody else's finances, the cheaper it is for them, and the sooner we get to earning money. Two more. I'm assuming in those bullets, the financial plan, development plan, business plan, et cetera, I'm assuming that and in your financial plan, development plan, business plan, I'm assuming they include stuff like our ranking on the company's financial standing, that you're actually looking at what is the company's financial picture look like out there already, and they're not having to get in this process just to try to salvage that, but they are working from a position of strength. And I also specifically don't see anything in the staff report about years of experience, and particularly years of experience with a certain amount of level of sales at a one location. So are we looking for people who have done the same amount of sales historically that have been here and greater, or are we will we accept looking at people that have never sold, that have only sold half or a third of that amount of sales, and this is a step up? And then the more I look at this, I'm just convinced that there's a certain complexity both to what we're asking people to do on the ground in this development project, and do we look for and grade a company on successfully going through that before? The gentleman talked about out there about having done this in Hawaii and somewhere else and somewhere else. And so an FBO that has done this successfully at another airport, gone through a major development project like this in a complex, ongoing operating environment, will that be successfully graded too? So my goal at the end of that, after all that is done, is to see you again when you're ready to make a recommendation, and you can tell a really good story for a particular FBO that answers all of these points, all of these questions, and clearly differentiates itself from the rest of the people who applied to be the next FBO or pair of FBOs. Does that make sense? All right. I've taken way more time than I should, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. And thank you, Councilmember Jordan. I had a lot of questions that those were posed as statements of things to do, so I think that's actually very efficient. I do have some questions, statements. If an operator applies for the first site and is either accepted for that or not, could they still apply for the second site RFP?
Thank you, Councilmember Stan. That's a two-part question. So if somebody applies for the first site and is accepted, they are not eligible to apply for the second site. If somebody applies for the first site and is not accepted, they are still eligible for the second site.
Okay, and there may be changes in what's being required in the second site, or not too substantially different?
So we're kind of holding back a little bit with the exact process for the second site, because depending on who is selected for that first site, that may tweak what we're looking for the second site. We may also learn from this process how to be a little bit more efficient in how we do things, or it could be exactly the same thing coming out for the second site.
Okay, thank you. And then I think that you talked about the 60 days, and it was 120 days. I guess it's a question, but also a comment that 120 days seems fine to me. It's been so long, and the process is going to be so long, and if we're putting in new sort of ideas of what we might like to see, how important is that 60 days or 120 days?
Thank you, Councilmember Stan. So this is for them to provide the proposal with the information we're asking for in the RFP. And the conceptual plans are going to be very, conceptual. They're not going to have to put a lot of details in big renderings and other things, and that will be refined as we go through the process with the lease and more reviews of their plans as we go forward. So there's going to be a lot of other opportunity to refine what is given, but to put together the initial proposal in the different FBOs that I've spoken to, the 60 days, I think, is just their anxiousness to try to get something in as opposed to waiting another 2 months beyond that.
Okay, so that seems, so those who are planning on applying the 60 days seems okay, and they're ready to go?
That's what I've heard, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess it's a dialogue about what we might want to see tied to it or not, and I sort of see that whole list as things that we would like to see at the airport, and I'm not sure they all are tied to the fixed-base operator or not. I mean, and I had the very similar list, the historic hangars, could that be part of it, or some, and again, like maybe leaving it open, that we're voicing that if somebody has something creative to offer there, that might be effective in the RFP. But also the previous elephant bar, the Goleta spot, whatever we're calling it. I guess I have some questions about tying those to the FBO. But if we're adding to that list, I mean, I'll just say things I'd like to see at the airport, and maybe those who are applying for the RFP process could address that if that seemed in their interest. But is another restaurant option? I think Councilmember Jordan talking about going and being at the airport and watching planes, take off and land. I also have those memories and really miss them. My mom took her first solo flight, landed in Santa Barbara Airport. So it was more open, and obviously things have changed. But I do think there's still a way to have some type of restaurant viewing that maybe isn't even, through the security of the airport or in the airport, but is sort of like, not any more risky than the road that goes right by with an open fence there. So something to look at, and I'm not sure that's part of the RFP, the fixed-base operator part. I just sort of want to voice in that same basket things we'd like to see at the airport, if other people would like to see that too. And then I do think, though, in the RFP, having some attention to environmental concerns. And I think that came up in Councilmember Jordan's comments also, not just innovations, but also sort of thinking about what the next thing is and being able to plan for it or adapt to it, adjust to it. And we have some other environmental concerns at the airport too. So really anything in that broad scope of something that is taking that into account or in some way. And I love the idea of the international customs, having that be local. And then I also like leaving it open like that to see what applicants come forward with. I wanted to ask, were you hoping that we were going to rank these in order of importance? Because they're all important, yes?
I think just a general sense. I don't think we need to get specific numbers from you, but just, what are, general weights or value, which are the higher priorities, or are they all of equal value?
I would say in general, they have to be able to make the investment, operate, and show longevity, and have interest in sustainability, demonstrated interest in sustainability, and have some idea of improvements community benefit-wise to the airport. Thank you.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can be brief because I agree with the two comments, I think, for the most part, that have been articulated. The Hangar Museum, the restaurant, international customs, sustainability, housing, all of these things are amazing and would be incredible to have alongside these reinvestments or investments into the FBO. And I think the key for me, though, sort of playing off of what both Councilmember Jordan and Councilmember Sneddon said, and what you articulated, Director, is just giving an opportunity for the FBOs to bring to the table what it is they think fits within their ken, as it were, and the opportunity to be creative as they're doing that. Clearly, they're hearing us and understand our priorities. An FBO is a very particular service that's provided. So, I think that it'll be very interesting, and it's an opportunity for them to bring forward things that I probably wouldn't think of, not myself running either an airport or an FBO. So I'm excited to learn about that. The only point that I would add to their comments is, and I'm sure you're miles ahead on this, but when it comes to assessing the RFP responses, I would just ask that there's a specific and sort of concrete column or opportunity for a score to be given when it comes to community engagement, community asset, community benefit. Because I love this idea of like, okay, you know, they have to be able to work, they have to be able to function, they have to have longevity and a financial plan and a holistic look at providing their services. But when we do this assessment, I think it's critical that there is a line on the scoring rubric specifically related to this extra creative stuff that my colleagues have been talking about. I want us to be able to have some concrete assessment of that, so we're not just going off of vibes. And I think, not that you ever would, but I think that would be really helpful, and I think it would signal to our applicants how important it is that their application truly is holistic. I think we've made it very clear today, but that would be my only feedback, and I think we are really on the right track, and I look forward to seeing what's to come. Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just again, kind of piggybacking off of my colleagues, I've for years now been commenting about how I wish the airport would collaborate more with other organizations in the community, like our school district, and provide field trips to the airport so the kids at a young age could experience what it's like to work in aviation and hopefully inspire them to continue a career in that. So if I could just add anything is to branch out to other agencies and try to get the community more involved that way.
Ms. Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I agree with essentially everything that my colleagues have mentioned, so just want to thank you as well for all your work on this. The other point I wanted to bring up that is of particular interest to me is on workforce development and community engagement, and I guess a little bit into community benefit, in particular around workforce housing and making sure that our airport employees are have the ability to live at least somewhere near where they're working, since retention, of course, is always an issue. And of course, our housing crisis is not getting any better. But I think our criteria, of course, can be flexible. So, I mean, I would love to see either contributions to our local housing trust fund or, either, affordable housing developments. I'm not sure like how much they, could do, but I think it would be important to, in weighing out this criteria and making sure that we take into consideration, the holistic needs of the employees, of the folks that are keeping the airport running. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And thank you, of course, for all your work.
All right, very well. Pretty familiar with both of these FBOs and other airports, and I've experienced a lot of different things. So my thing for us, and Director Hastert knows, is number one, maximum amount of hangar space available, because we are next to the ocean, and people that can do would love to hangar their planes as opposed to just tie downs. And I realize that's always not financially feasible, but maximizing that, maximizing available rent space so that we can accommodate not only, of course, our FBOs, but our other carriers like FedEx and whatnot as well, so that all works in a general pattern. I'm excited about this because the north side of that airport has looked exactly like it does since I was in college, and that was a couple years ago. So it's finally coming around to fruition, which should be great. And I also would like this to be, as people fly into these places, and we saw it during the pandemic when general aviation went skyrocketing as opposed to commercial aviation, it's really important to have that first impression of Santa Barbara when they fly in be a really fine impression, a well-served, well-friendly, a great facility impression. I've seen it in other airports that I've been going, wow, look what these guys do, and I know, and I've been in their facilities in other airports which are like that. So whatever we can do to get away from the, where we are right now is in temporary facilities and get to that mode. Lastly, about the restaurant space, it looks awkward to me to carve out that thing, geometrically out of that thing. And I know that building, we put $750,000 into it back when I was either first on council, before it was first on council, to do that last operator. And I've known that building inside out. I've known it since it was built, and it's not ready for prime time. So I'd rather not, if I had a say on it, put more money into that building, but I'd like to see us incorporate into the plans going forward. I don't know how that's going to work with the master plan or whatever. So like you said, we're on a short term year-to-year lease with the the proposed operators, which is fine. But I would love to see us not try to work around that space and preserve something that clearly does not need to be preserved in terms of structures.
So Mayor, just for clarification, we had carved that out. We no longer carved that out. That is a part of the east side
Okay.
RFP proposal.
All right, yeah, because there's not much there. But like my colleague said, I would love to see some kind of a concession there where you can do plane spotting and whatnot and hang out like we did in the old Caro's days, so. Okay, there's no vote on that, so thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you to the speakers out there. We'll move on to the next item, which, if you will read that into the agenda, please.
Yes, we have item 9, access to legal counsel pilot program evaluation.
All right, very good.
I probably messed you up.
Thank you. Doubles?
There we go. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and City Council members. I'm Laura Doubles. I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager for the city. And here with me today is Miss Jennifer Smith, the Executive Director from Legal Aid. Thank you for having us here today to present to you an update for the Access to Legal Counsel pilot program. Back on December 6th of 2022, the council set aside $250,000 from the fiscal year 2022 general fund operating surplus to fund an Access to Legal Counsel program. The goal was to provide legal services to low-income tenant households at risk of eviction. So the city is contracted with Legal Aid Foundation of Santa Barbara County, and they've operate the one-year pilot program. The contract began last August 1st and runs through July 31st this year. The goal is to provide legal advice or representation to a minimum of 80 additional households at risk of eviction. So as of March 31st, which was quarter 3, there have been 50 cases, and all cases were served within the household income guidelines of 50% AMI. So 7 were 31 to 50% AMI, which was very low income, and 43, or the majority, were from 0 to 30% AMI, or extremely low income. 32%, or 16 of 50 cases, required Spanish translation. So as of March 31st, 50 were initiated and 20 cases were closed with the results on the screen here. So either there was advice provided or negotiated settlements with or without litigation achieved, or an uncontested or contested court decision, or limited action was given. And here's a table of Legal Aid's historical caseload for comparison purposes. Sorry about that. This actually shows the service years from 2020 all the way through present. And a couple of notes here on this is that the Access to Legal Counsel pilot program mostly began in September of 2024 once they hired the program attorney. The second column there has the FTEs for the housing attorneys, and that includes all their attorneys serving the southern Santa Barbara County, not just the city. And they do have a current one full-time current vacancy for an attorney that is expected to be hired in May that will increase their total to 4 full-time attorneys. This table shows the actual expenditures as of March 31st. So as you can see here, $102,811 has been expended, which is 41% of the total contract of $250,000. Legal Aid hired one full-time program attorney and also added hours for a .65 full-time bilingual Spanish and English legal assistant or intake coordinator, and also provided administrative personnel as needed. They have successfully completed their requirements for financial and data reports, submitting quarters 1, 2, and 3, with program progress updates, including non-personally identifying demographic data. This can be found as attachment 2 to your staff report. And they also provided one outreach event per the contract back on October 14th of last year, right after it launched, at the Housing Santa Barbara Day to educate the public on key program features. And the attorney there was present to give the presentation and also answer any questions of the public. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Smith for her part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. I'm Jennifer Smith. I'm the Executive Director and an attorney at the Legal Aid Foundation of Santa Barbara County, and provide you some additional updates on our program. Next slide. So just as a reminder for those watching at home for who we are, the Legal Aid Foundation is a nonprofit 501c3 charitable organization, and our mission is to provide high-quality civil legal services to low-income and other vulnerable residents in order to ensure access to justice. And we celebrated 65 years of service last year, so we were really excited. We had a special event that was sponsored by many local law firms and businesses. And we are the only civil legal aid organization located in the city of Santa Barbara that provides this type of assistance to tenants. Many of you know we're headquartered at the, right down here on Cannon Perdido at the old tea house. I always enjoy hearing the old tea house stories. We, as an organization, countywide, have 24 employees. That's 3 administrative positions, including myself. We have 14 attorneys, 11 in-house, 3 self-help attorneys based at the courthouses, and 7 support staff, 6 full-time and 1 part-time. Next slide. And so as a reminder about why we're here, let's face it, a lot of people say, why would you actually pay money to attorneys voluntarily? But it's very important, and particularly at this time, really in our nation, this council unanimously supported a pilot of this program because this council recognized 2 crises that are happening at the same time. One is a homelessness and housing insecurity crisis, as well as a civil justice crisis. Some of you may have seen there was actually a recent article in the New York Times, and there was reference to some data from the National Center for State Courts that 75% of civil cases nationwide involve a party that is not represented by counsel. And so access to counsel is one strategy in terms of homelessness prevention and housing insecurity prevention. It helps ensure that your important city policies are enforced, and it ensures more just and fair outcomes should a case need to go to court. Next slide. So I wanted to share just some key, successes and challenges. We wanted to be really mindful of Councilmember Harmon's call to really make sure that this was an expansion of our services. So we did undertake hiring, and so because of that, we did have a slight delay in the startup of the program, where we really, the contract started in August. but we didn't have billing until September when we got our program staffed and going. But we were able to, train our staff on the program rules and requirements. We updated our intake forms and case management systems to collect the data that's been requested. And as was mentioned, we conducted outreach, and this is in addition to other general outreach that we do in the community. Next slide, please. So let's see, this reflects some of the information you've received. A few things I wanted to highlight about our cases. The majority of the cases involve the posture of either being at the notice stage, where a family or individual has received a notice to terminate tenancy, and or at the unlawful detainer stage, which is the court process for eviction. And based on the data, and this is just from our closed cases, that we've already generated $133,000 in economic value that has been returned to the community in the form of settlement payments, in the form of relocation assistance that may not have been provided if it wasn't for our role as council, rent waived, illegal rent increases avoided, and so forth. So access to counsel provides a really important return on investment. And I wanted to just highlight a few examples in terms of some of the types of stories that we've heard. For example, in one of our cases, we had a client who was having a difficult time with the landlord to complete important repairs in terms of plumbing, electrical, and remediation of mold. The client had been withholding rent in connection to the repairs that were needed, and ultimately an eviction case was filed. And so our attorney helped the client assert a habitability defense to the eviction. We ultimately negotiated a settlement that was pre-trial. And that resulted in $26,000 in rent that was waived. And ultimately, in the return to the security deposit. And in this case, the client chose to vacate the unit. We also had an additional case where we had a senior who received housing assistance from the housing authority. And there was an eviction case pending in relation to alleged violations of the lease agreement. And our attorney was able to negotiate a settlement where the client was informed and reminded about the rules governing their lease agreement. And we were able to help them maintain their voucher, maintain their housing, and also connect them to community resources to support mental health and substance abuse issues. So those are just two examples I wanted to share, and it highlights the value of having legal counsel in these matters. Next slide. This is just some of the additional demographic data I wanted to share. I know there had been some discussion when the pilot was first implemented about both about sort of income level and sort of which types of folks to prioritize. And from what we've seen, the current income rules are working, and I think they make sense. And you'll also see that we're helping people who are very vulnerable, whether it's seniors on fixed incomes or those receiving Section 8 benefits, or who may be Spanish speaking and have difficulty navigating a court or legal process that takes place in English. Next slide. So the majority of cases involve a negotiated settlement or an uncontested court decision. We take a client-centered approach that considers the merits of the underlying legal case, the client's goals, some people are really trying to stay housed as much as possible. You can imagine particularly where somebody is a voucher holder. Other times where maybe there's been a relationship breakdown, it's better for both sides that folks move on. And as much as possible, we avoid trial. And if we do need to go to trial, the individual gets a much better chance at success. We do have some cases that are more complex. I know the council has taken a deep dive on the rules and regulations involving eviction. And so there are times where cases are more complex and take longer to resolve. But we do expect to meet the pilot program goal to serve 80 households by the end of the contract period. I did want to just note, in the staff report, I saw that there was a note about the funding level. I did want to state that the expenses to date don't reflect a full fiscal year. So the contract start was August 1, and then we didn't really start incurring expenses until the end of September. So our current expenses really reflect, I'd say, 6.5 months of expenses. So we would recommend status quo on funding. And then should an RFP process be implemented, we would hope that we would need time to plan if there was the potential that we would submit an RFP but not be selected. I was uncertain how that process might unfold, and also what the parameters of an RFP might be. I think whoever the provider is, I think it's important for the city to set some parameters and for an RFP process. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. Are there, do you have more of a presentation, Ms. Nobles?
Just a little bit more.
Oh, please do. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So in summary, I just wanted to state that the pilot program has reached 63% of the goal, and that was with 4 months remaining. Now we've gone through another month, so about 3 more months of service to be provided. So the staff is requesting council's direction on whether to continue or terminate the program at the end of the contract, which will be July 31st this year. In order to continue, a request for proposals will need to be issued for the selection of a provider, and funding will need to be identified. And then the current contract we have with legal aid requires that the city provide 60 days written notice prior to terminating the agreement, which that would mean we'd have to give notice by May 30th this year. So on the screen is our staff recommendation, is just to receive this update on the pilot program and then direct staff to, again, either terminate or establish it as ongoing, and authorize the staff to solicit requests for proposals for a service provider to operate the program. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation. We're here for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's to council for questions. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I just have, I think, one small question about when do we ever have justification for sole source? If it's expertise or continuity of care or familiarity with the topic, or are there opportunities? Like, I see the 2 choices, but is there a third choice of sole source? I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but
there could be. I mean, that's something, there are provisions in the municipal code for that. I think, in this instance, staff was recommending a request for proposals. It's just sort of a best practice that we've exercised.
And could one option be extending it a year while that RFP process is being developed and done? I'm just concerned about continuity of care for cases that are going. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both so much, and thank you, Ms. Smith. I continue to have, I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse here about the data question, but I'm not quite understanding. I know you referenced my concern around additional cases, and that is exactly what I was trying to get at. But I'm not seeing anything in the data that shows that these 80 households are on top of that number of cases that you would have supported anyway. And I guess that's what I'm trying to confirm. So I totally hear you, like those 80 cases are going to be done. That's awesome, and the timeline makes perfect sense. But, and I think it was slide 6 or 7, for the 2025 totals, are what we're going to see when you come back at the end, and I don't know if that could come up, if that's possible, because I don't have it in front. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so it's slide 6. So I guess what I'm trying to confirm is this line that says TBD in 2025, for the total number of cases, are we going to expect to see around 190 cases served total by legal aid? Last year it was 108, the year before 115. So what I'm trying to confirm is the 80 that we've agreed to is on top of what you're typically serving without this right to counsel program.
To clarify, the data is tricky because both our staffing and funding has not been level over the 5-year period. So when looking historically at this data, the funding and staffing has fluctuated. In addition, the laws have fluctuated, particularly, right, like for a while we had the moratoriums related to COVID, then those were lifted. But absolutely, without this position, we would not be doing this work. So just as an example, the State Bar of California ended a program last year for homelessness prevention services and eviction defense services. And that was funding that we used to have, and that ended last year. So it's tricky because our funding has not, I can't just have a flat comparison in terms of funding over the last 5 years with the city on top. It's probably similar to your budget process during COVID and sort of with the ups and downs.
So I hear you. I'm just, when we put forth had this conversation initially, it was like, yes, it will definitely be additive and we will have more than we had last year. And so I feel like a little bit, I'm struggling. I wish that I had a little more clarity on this point going into it, but that makes sense. And I think if we could get a deep dive about that, about like funding sources that were lost but for this, we would have been here or not. I mean, I think that would be really helpful to me moving forward. And maybe that can be part of the RFP process, is just understanding for any entity that might apply exactly how that's going to work. And you guys do it better than anybody. That goes without saying. It just continues to be a concern for me because I don't have visibility into that at all. And so it's the same for any contract. I truly, you know how much I value you. It's not personal. It's just any contract that comes forward, I feel responsibility to have visibility into that. And this is one that I just, I don't. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
The other trend we have seen is an increase. The trend is an increase in the representation, what we call the extended services cases, for multiple reasons, but particularly with changes in the law since 2019, that people really need full scope representation in the cases. And so that trend's been consistent. If you look at the COVID period's a little bit tricky because you have it a little bit flat, but if you look at the average over 3 years, because some of the cases get bumped into, were deferred from, let's say, 2020 and 2021. If you look at that average compared to the average of the last 2 years, we have more of the extended service cases. And there's no question that we couldn't have done that without this support.
Ms. Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Just for clarification, just following up on Councilmember Harmon's question, are you seeing at Legal Aid a loss of I don't know if it was one-time funding or it was, I'm assuming, limited time funding that is currently ended, and these city funds have been sort of backfilling what you're not getting from other funding sources? Is that kind of what we're seeing, or? I'm not sure if you're understanding my question correctly. I can rephrase.
Yeah, we have over, for our whole operation, I have over 20 sources of funding at any given time that, some are time limited, some are ongoing. So it's always an adjustment. And then underlying that is support from our community, donation, individual donations and so forth. We did, the state bar did have one-time funding that had been issued from the state legislature for homelessness prevention that we had for about a 2-year period. Now, this is services that wasn't just specific to the city of Santa Barbara. So, people were served in other parts of our community, but that program, and it's difficult, and to Ms. Harmon's point, it's difficult at times to predict what type of budget year is the state legislature going to have. They may have decided to continue it, they may have not. So, I certainly always come here in good faith, but it can be difficult to predict at times what'll happen year to year.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Do you know off the top of your head roughly how much that state funding was that you no longer have? I believe you said it was about 2 years that you had that funding from the state ledge.
Yes, I would need to double check.
Yeah. No worries. I don't expect you to know the number off the top of your head.
But I'd be happy to get that and share that.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you, Mayor Rouse.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, so in the scope of your services, or the geographic scope of your services, and the numbers presented today, how many of those clients were Santa Barbara City residents?
So for the data we shared in the spreadsheet and those are all city residents.
Those are all 100% city residents?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. And then when you have a situation, because we've gone with our legal department, and I'm sorry for having not researched this before, to prosecute somebody that's in violation of our codes and whatnot, and then somebody's also approached representation from legal aid. How does that process work when you've got one defendant and the plaintiff has either two sources of representation or two different directions going after that particular client? How does that work, Madam Attorney?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just quickly, any case like that prosecuted from my office would be a criminal prosecution. We don't represent the tenant in that case or the landlord in that case. We're representing the people. So that is entirely different from what legal aid is providing, which are services to the tenant, or could be the landlord, but under this contract to the tenant. If I could just take 1 minute to clarify one thing. So the contract that's existing is a 1-year contract with legal aid, which will expire July 31st, 2025, unless it's extended and more funding is provided. So, or unless the city exercises its ability to early terminate, in which case we would have to give the 60-day notice that Ms. Doubles was referring to. And any money that's not expended by the end of either an early termination or an expiration by its terms in July would have to be returned to the city. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I was just thinking about it, going back to my question, like an egregious violation, like a habitability issue where it was clearly illegal, but the client may have gone to legal aid first and as opposed to, and may or may not be able to settle. Does it then get referred back to our people, or do you take it right to court and let them adjudicate that? How does that work?
If I could interrupt there again. So we work together with legal aid
Okay,
often.
I'm looking for the collaboration.
Where
right.
we're prosecuting the violation of the municipal code, and legal aid would be representing the tenant to preserve their rights.
Okay, very good. Very good, thank you. Further questions from anybody? Okay, we have a couple of public speakers on this. On Arce?
Last one of the day. Okay, and I'm here in support to establish the Legal Counsel Pilot Program as an ongoing to continue to provide this program in the community and for our rentals, and to continue to like uplift the need for stronger tenant protections as well. And the Legal Aid Foundation, or whichever foundation program y'all decide to continue this with, continue to just elevate that need for community. And as we have seen in the data, it's important and it's needed, and it has, and thank you for providing that information so that we continue to work with it. So that's all.
You, Stanley Zankoff?
Hello again. So I just wanted to echo what Anna just mentioned. I think the city should absolutely continue funding, tenant right to counsel. And instead of considering cutting the funding, I think, the council should really look at expanding the program. I can't emphasize enough the number of calls for tenant counsel that we get at the Santa Barbara Tenants Union. Again, not attorneys, all volunteer run, and it's a weekly request. And my understanding is that the courthouse self-help desk is just totally slammed and inundated. And as you saw from Jennifer Smith's presentation, this is so crucial for so many reasons. With the difficulties, especially of recruiting and retaining attorneys, especially eviction defense and legal aid attorneys, especially in a region that's so difficult, as we know, to find housing in, for example, and just the general cost of living. We should look at expanding, not shrinking the program long term, because I think thinking about an organization making its plans long term, I think that reassurance and that funding, that stable funding, can only help sort of provide a little bit of reprieve in that bottleneck. And I'll just add here also best practices on programs like these, from my very limited understanding, but from those who do work in this space, suggest defining a set of tenants that could be covered by the available funding, whether that's seniors, people with disabilities, voucher holders, et cetera. This kind of helps focus the program and anchor it, and then allowing it to prove its track record even more and grow it strategically. I know that that's probably further on down the line. I hope that this RFP will capture the intent of building a durable resource for tenants that can scale and become a viable option for attorneys and other legal professionals. I think we got to think about our ecosystem, and I think in this space it can be pretty fragile. So appreciate everybody's insight. I think it's really an exciting part of our city's work to be growing this program. Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Clerk, any speakers online?
No speakers online, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's back to council. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I think just for a comment, well, first of all, thank you for the work you're doing. I think when we hear from tenants and people who do get legal representation and help, it is from legal aid. And I think we've heard from people individually. It would be helpful to have maybe more rigorous data reporting. I think in general. I can see a justification for sole source here, just in terms of familiarity with local cases, expertise, continuity of care. If we do go to the RFP option, then I think it could be just a good opportunity to really showcase the results, really maybe take time in highlighting how in particular the intervention and support that legal aid provides is in a data-driven way making a difference in the outcomes. I think my first choice would be to recommend status quo funding for the next year while developing an RFP process, mainly because I'm concerned that a one-year pilot with legal cases are going to be caught in the middle there, like new cases not being taken up while this is either expired or moving forward, and I'm concerned about the slowing down of those services. So I think that could be maybe a middle way solution there. I think I understand you do have a vacancy for an attorney that you are looking to fill in May. Is that correct? Yeah.
That will be filled Monday.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
that is fantastic news because any feedback I get is that there is more work to be done than there is availability of attorneys, and I'm sure there are a lot of difficulties in finding attorneys to do this meaningful work. It's a hard work, and I appreciate the work you're doing, and I think that additional attorney is crucial. I would like to see more educational events, I think, not just for tenants, but also for property owners. I think, as you pointed out, with new ordinances that the city puts in place or the state puts in place, I think a lot of these things could also be mitigated ahead of it by more education, and for the city too. We need to do this too, more education for tenants and for property owners. I really like that this is a civil legal option. When needed, the city is able to do the criminal options, but I think anything that can alleviate that or head that off and really address the civil options helps the city too, helps us all, helps the community. And I think an important point that was made was the economic value that's returned back to the community, that $133,000. I think that's an important point. And I would say now more than ever that value, no one else is doing this locally that I can think of. So I'm not concerned about an RFP process other than it takes time, it takes effort away from the work, but I do also think that it's a good chance to really showcase how impactful. But I think to be a fair RFP, it would be while we were extending for an additional year so that we just don't have interruption in care.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, of course, will begin with my sincere gratitude for all that you do, and particularly your staff attorneys who are just, I mean, there are not words to describe their commitment and expertise, which is really unmatched. So just a couple of comments I want to make conceptually around how we're going to move forward, because I think, I should say, unequivocally, I support wholeheartedly making the right to counsel program permanent. It's a priority for me. I believe in it. We need it. There's no two ways about it. But I do think it's important as we move from a pilot to a permanent program that we take an opportunity to think through what are the contours of this program? What is this going to look like? How are we going to ensure that this money is most effective and most effectively utilized in our community? So for that reason alone, I think it's incumbent on us to do an RFP. Whether we have one applicant or 20, the RFP process is as much about us trying to clearly articulate the long-term vision for this program as it is about ensuring that we have a fair, competitive process, in my view. So I think it's necessary that we do so. But I agree, continuing status quo funding for the year while we think through what the program looks like makes good sense. Continuity of care is important. But I did want to throw out another concept that I've been thinking about, and I don't know, I throw this out only because I don't know that there's another time to do so, and I think it warrants greater conversation how we're going to frame this program. I've been having some conversations with Supervisor Roy Lee about the right to counsel concept, and in other jurisdictions, they put the right to counsel attorney in the public defender's office. So, there could be an opportunity for partnership with the county where we house an attorney in the public defender's office doing this work, jointly funded between city and county, an opportunity to serve potentially a lot more and to, work in tandem with the work that legal aid's doing through another office and with more money. So I put that out there. You know, it's early days in having this conversation, but there's been interest from Supervisor Lee, and I really do think we should have a larger conversation about how to best utilize this funding. I think we're united in our belief that it's necessary, but there are some really creative things that might fall sort of adjacent to or outside an RFP, and I'm not sure that just straight up giving, I don't know another word for that, sending money to nonprofits, that sounds terrible. I don't mean it negatively. I just mean I'm not sure that's necessarily the best way to go. And we are sort of pigeonholing ourselves a little bit if we say we're going to do an RFP. There are potentially other creative ways to use these dollars and multiply them. So I would ask that we have an opportunity, perhaps maybe if Ms. McAdoo can connect with county staff to start having those conversations. And it may be that it's a non-starter and we do a traditional RFP and that's that. But I think, you know, this is a very well-developed area of law and policy. There's a lot of people who have done it before us. And I think there's ways to maximize these dollars that I'm interested in at least exploring. And certainly in the meantime, whether we end up awarding a contract to legal aid through an RFP or some other mechanism, the level funding for the next year while we do that work, I think is critical. So that's my feedback. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with much of what I've heard already, but to me, there's a big disconnect in the talking points. So somebody just got up and said they were inundated forever, all day long, every day, with people asking for help, but that doesn't translate very well to the numbers of clients you've served in the last 7 months. I know people stand up and say anything, and I know people that are talking to that person say anything too, but, you know, if you just would have been in the parking lot at Bass Street and whatever's going on up by Cottage or in the living room at Edgerly now, that would have been enough clients that doubled the amount of clients that you're showing on here. It just seems like there's this huge need for this out there, but it's not being reflected in the client count of the way your presentation is looking. I don't have a problem sole sourcing. I think this is the only qualified organization here. The thing with the county tantalizes me, but I'd like to just clear that up from a benchmarking or requirement standpoint in the next 3 months before we just renew it and just resolve that. I mean, I would have rather welcomed you back here saying, we have 200 clients who are waiting for us and we need more money. And that's what I would expect from what I hear and see going on out there in the community. To be back and to be behind what the benchmark was going to be, and just the number of clients you've served in 7 months just seems disappointing to me based on what I've personally seen and what I hear all the time from advocacy people. So that's my take on it. I mean, I don't disagree with anything everybody said. I think this is the organization to do it, but I'd just like to see some of this remedied, that if we're going to give $250,000, X number of dollars, that the expectation is that people aren't being inundated with calls and they have nowhere to go, or they get referred somewhere, but then the client list is not growing like it should be. So, thanks.
Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I had a quick question for Ms. Smith. The position that you mentioned is going to be filled on Monday. How long had you been recruiting for that position? Or just like a rough estimate?
Several months.
Several months, yeah. Thank you for that. I'll just dive right into my comments. First off, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing at Legal Aid. I know that you are all doing incredible work there. Also, thank you, Ms. Doubles, for compiling this presentation. It goes without saying that this is important work. And I think it's important that we take everything into consideration because, yes, I think we all agree that we would want to see more folks, more families being serviced.
retention of, or not even just retention, but recruitment of qualified applicants, it seems like is a struggle for legal aid. It's definitely a struggle for our city and for businesses all across the city and region. And I'm hoping that now with this position being filled, that we will see an uptick in how many cases are being able to be taken in. Because my understanding is also there's a lot of folks in the community who want to go to legal aid, but there's just no availability from the existing attorneys because they're all slammed. And so I do agree that it would be beneficial to see more data on how this funding is being used, in particular for our City of Santa Barbara residents, but also making sure that we take a look at the numbers and how they're going to look once we have the additional attorney. I know one attorney alone at legal aid or really anywhere else is taking on quite a bit of cases. So I know that it'll help, and I'm just curious to see, how those numbers would be affected. But I do agree with Ms. Sneddon on the concept of continuity. It's really important that we make sure that in whatever we choose to do with this program, that we are not putting families at risk, or that we don't cause families to be caught in the crossfire and, be left without legal representation. I'm okay with a sole source, also very open to an RFP process, but I do want to make sure that we continue to, or that we enable the continuity of this program. I would be supportive of status quo funding for the next year to legal aid while we develop the RFP process, or even while we talk about the potential collaborations with county, because I think those discussions warrant even more folks in this room than the ones that are here today, but it's going to take us time. And so I want to make sure that those families in our community are not being affected. And I also agree with what was mentioned before about more outreach. So I think with the limited staff at legal aid, that can pose a challenge, right? So my friendly suggestion would be partnering with other local nonprofits like CAUSE, the Tenants Union, and so many others who already partner with you on this work, but partnering with them specifically to make sure that we can get this program out to people. Because I think there are more people that need it that don't necessarily know that program exists, and part of that I think could also help reflect the need, the real need versus the cases that are being taken in. So very supportive and grateful for all the work that legal aid is doing. I think, again, continuity is key to make sure that we don't affect our residents negatively, but also really want to dive deeper into how we can make sure that this is a sustainable long-term program. The last thing I'll add is, as far as just the numbers go, I will say I'm encouraged by seeing, despite us not being at the 80 targeted households yet, it is encouraging to see it's $250,000 allocated, only $102K spent, and $133K being returned to the community. So more money being returned to the community than what was utilized. That, to me, seems to be a very good return on investment. It seems to be just overall a good investment into the community. And so I'm very supportive of continuing this program, but again, making sure that we set some more, maybe more clear parameters and explore other options, because whether it's something we do with the county or the RFP process, of course, legal aid could apply again. I think this could be a really great opportunity to, like Ms. Sneddon said, showcase just how much legal aid is doing. And I know we mentioned before, even just additional data on funding sources. I think that would help council understand better the financial need for legal aid, because it makes sense if you are losing funding from other sources, why the funding from the city might be more critical than ever. So I think seeing those numbers would be really helpful, and so even just following up with us and our staff would be incredibly helpful. But thank you.
All right, very good. I'd like the clerk to note that I'm going to actually agree with Megan Harmon tonight on something. Exceptional time. No, I do. I like that idea because it goes, and I asked that question about the city limits and whatnot, because it is city money, but really the problem is more regional than it is anything to do with a specific city. So that makes nothing but sense. And I do really want this to be a collaborative move as opposed to an adversarial move. And I think a couple of times it crossed the line, and here, let me tell you why. I did some research with Rental Housing Mediation Task Force. Some of those people had been advised not to use them, and I don't know by whom, and I'm not making any kind of accusations, but I really want this to be something where people use every effort that are in our toolbox to stay out of the court system, to get away from that, to settle like many of the things you're talking about, settling, Ms. Smith, so that's really important. I really don't want to see an advocate from the legal services in here talking to us about policy, speaking. I don't think that was appropriate, okay? Because what we have is a really sensitive situation. This whole process has been very weighted on one side. That's why this council is so split on it. And what we want to do is diffuse that adversarial nature. We want to be cooperative and collaborative because it takes both sides to make this work. And both sides making this work doesn't mean we're going to load up one side over the other. So when I need legal services, and I was a supporter of this and I will support it going forward, but I really wanted to find what it is we're doing. We're not looking for adversarial relationship, we're looking for collaborative ones. Because to build a strong rental community, it can't be demonizing one side and victimizing the other to make it happen. A lot of this process was about that, even though it may not have been the intention, that's how it ended up. So when we hire a legal service or we supply some stuff over and above the Rental Housing Mediation Task Force, it's got to be to the end, that end where we are the neutral party. We are here to support everyone because they're all constituents. We have suppliers and we have consumers of a commodity, which is housing. And if we demonize or don't serve one side or the other, it's going to fall apart. And we've got to be very mindful of that. And I really want our legal representation, particularly if we're going to help finance them, to be on that exact same page with us. And I think we should be that way as well. So I like the idea of going to RFP. The funding level and whatnot, I think I would leave that to Ms. McAdoo to suggest and how we go about that. But I do also like the idea of contacting the county and seeing if it is something we can do vis-a-vis the public defender's office, or if that's too far of a reach, or if there's some kind of collaborative thing we can do with legal aid as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a vendor per se. It can be just a program that we can do ad hoc with these different cases. So hopefully the massive cases that we've seen or heard in front of us was kind of a surge, and then that activity will, that I don't want it to be more clients. I like it to be less clients if that's together possible. And as we communicate, put out the information, have more and more signed leases, I think we will get back away from having this being an ongoing issue all the time. So with that, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. There were a few things there just to follow up on those comments to, well, I'll first say that I support continuing with the status quo funding for another year while we look into other options, collaborations with the county or others, or also looking at, it'll take time to make a very clear RFP for what it is that we want for this program moving forward. This particular contract was specifically for underrepresented tenants. I will say just today on Nextdoor, which is not my favorite place to visit, but there was a property owner who was asking for help and clarity with protections for property owners, and there were several comments that said, oh, you should talk to legal aid, you should talk to legal aid, you should talk to legal aid. So I think legal aid does have the reputation for being both helpful and areas of expertise to both property owners and tenants, and I think that's an important distinction, but the contract that we hold with legal aid at this time was specifically for tenants who at the time were being underrepresented. So I think that is something worth looking at, but I certainly agree that I don't think there's a need to demonize anyone on either side as long as everybody's following the law. And so I think that that expertise to be able to help on both sides, I have seen that legal aid is able to do that, just like our rental mediation board is able to do that, look on both sides of issues. But in the event that tenants are not able to be represented or mediation isn't working or there's other indications, then that ability for legal aid to be able to help tenants is what we asked for. I also think that individuals within legal aid or in any sector of our community are able to give public comment on policy direction. That's my personal view. And I think especially if they're working sort of daily with what the issues are, that I would like invite that kind of input. Anyway, my support, I think I'll make a motion actually for continuing status quo funding for another year while we investigate, explore options for developing either a clear RFP and or in conjunction with exploring collaborations with the county or other entities, give ourselves time to do that properly.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Sneddon, second by Harmon, was it? Okay. Further discussion from council? Did everybody understand the motion? Okay. With that, we'll go for a roll call vote.
Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon, to direct staff to continue status quo funding for another year while looking into other collaborative program options and developing a request for procurement. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes.
Do you have something in the motion, Ms. Sneddon?
Yes, I do. I think there were also with comments for maybe even coming back with an update before that. I mean, I think.
I think one suggestion I might have is maybe we can come back to the Finance Committee with maybe the scope of work for the RFP or an update on discussions with the county before we proceed further with that, if that works.
Excellent. With opportunity for legal aid also to come back with more data, how things are going once the new hiring happens, that type of, given the input that has been shared from council.
Are you good with the motions? as
Yes.
stands? All right. Very good. And if there are no further comments, I'll go to the roll call vote.
We have a motion from Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon, as read by Councilmember Sneddon, to direct staff to continue status quo funding for another year while looking into other collaborative program options and developing a request for procurement through the Finance Committee. Councilmember Gutierrez?
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
Councilmember Harmon?
Yes.
Councilmember Santamaria?
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
And Mayor Rouse?
Aye. Passed unanimously with all presence, and Mr. Friedman is not with us yet. All right, very good. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll go to council member engagements. Anybody get engaged here? Actually, I don't think I did the committee assignments, so do them both, please. Who's ever up first? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I missed out on quite a few events because I was getting over a cold, but I did make it to a few. I was asked to speak on a panel for Stessa in Isla Vista. I attended the ribbon cutting of Ilubia's new restaurant in Isla Vista. I attended the All Gauchos reunion on State Street. It was a alumni weekend for UCSB, and the mayor spoke, and also attended a dinner on Friday night and the Gaucho Fest on Saturday. I also attended Earth Day for a little bit, attended my high school alumni fundraiser, and attended the 100th anniversary of the Santa Barbara earthquake at El Paseo. Attended the family cookout at Franklin School, hosted by Healing Justice. And I got to see George Clinton perform last night in Ventura. That was fun.
All right, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. In official business, attended the Historic Landmark Commission meeting. The big item on that day was looking at the Los Patos Boulevard underpass. I know this is near and dear to you, Mayor Rouse, and I think looking at the bridge removal, and that will be moving forward. I think HLC was in unanimous agreement that understanding that the bridge will need to be relocated and looking at options on that. Attended a Kachuma Operation and Management Board meeting. The big item on that one was the budget moving forward. And our assessment is going up a small amount, up 1.5% from last year. So we'll be seeing that at council. That'll be a $3.2 million assessment, but that does keep the Kachuma operations moving, and we all are using that water. I did attend a Rotary Club meeting, and also the Earth Day festivities were fantastic all the way around. Congratulations to the Community Environmental Council, and also congratulations to our city staff. The booths were, they were hopping, so well attended, great swag, great stickers, bilingual outreach, and really fun. So thank you to all.
Ms. Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. As far as official business goes, attended Parks and Rec Commission discussing several of the capital projects going on there, and then also attended the Transportation and Circulation Committee. Big item there is the Milpas sidewalk widening project. Other than that, also attended the Santa Barbara Foundation's Person of the Year luncheon, stopped by and did some time at the Earth Day elected officials booth, participated in a couple of events for the Gaucho Reunion weekend, including the block party on State Street. Also attended the Cause Action Fund Leadership Awards and fundraiser. And let me see, I feel like there's something else missing. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Mayor Rouse.
All righty. Okay, I had a few things going on. Let's see, I did the Santa Barbara Foundation People of the Year Awards. Met with the Spanish Consul General at the Presidio Chapel and a beautiful dinner put on by David Bolton and Company. Very interesting to talk to those guys. Did the Citizens Breakfast for the fourth graders at Laguna Blanca, where they each fourth grader interviewed and then presented a person in the community to talk about and lecture. Went to the Santa Barbara Symphony, where I got to open the symphony next to the tallest woman I've met in my life, which is Catherine, that runs the symphony. She's about 6'4", and she has 6-inch heels on. So somebody said, who is the little guy next to Catherine? The Highway 101 ribbon cutting. I went at that in Padaro Lane with SB CAG to celebrate getting the highway to that last part before we get to our last part, which will be probably the most complicated and the most disruptive part, but that's the part that'll eventually be that ties us into the roundabouts by Padaro Lane, not Padaro Lane, but by Cabrillo Boulevard, and we get a southbound on-ramp. And then I did Earth Day and also the earthquake party that Oscar was talking about. And on Sunday, I did the Hillel Hall of Fame brunch out in Goleta, and that was pretty interesting, and a lot of folks out there for that. And with that, I think that's going to do it for us. We stand adjourned at 4:47. Thank you.